Hi, Josh with Motorcycle Adventure Therapy. Um, so I figured this would be a good way to introduce our therapy portion of the website and get into what the therapy portion of Motorcycle Adventure Therapy really is and how it integrates into the motorcycle and adventure part of the website and comes together. So the reason I decided to add the therapy portion is I feel that we all have stressors in our life and we all deal with a lot of different issues, a lot of things going on. And one of the commonalities I found is that going on adventures and riding motorcycles was a good stress reliever for a lot of people that I talked to. So I said, why not combine them all and look into why they find it such a stress reliever for them, and how can we bring them together to make motorcycle adventure therapy more of an accessible website and tool where people can connect and share their own experiences and what works for them and what different adventures that they go on, what type of motorcycles they enjoy, and bring it all together basically in a very therapeutic community for everyone. And I thought that the therapy portion would be a good way to do that. So what we're going to do here is just go through an introduction of the therapy portion, how I got into the therapy aspect, and why I decided to bring it all together into this one website. So the therapy portion came together when basically I was had the idea to put adventure motorcycles together with some of the things that I have come across in my life experiences as well as my career in social work as a social worker. So I started off my career in the military, actually, in the U.S. Army, and I spent 8 years in the Army, got out in 2011, and noticed that getting out of the military and transitioning to civilian life was very difficult, had a lot of stressors involved with it, and it was just totally different. So I also noticed many of my friends that were transitioning out of the military were having a difficult time and experiencing a lot of these same stressors. And I decided to try and study that and see if I could help some of my friends that were having some of these issues and find maybe some solutions, since I had some of the background in the military and also was studying psychology at the time, going back to school for my bachelor's degree. So I kind of started studying that, pulling it all together, talking to them, figuring out exactly some of the stressors they were dealing with. It brought in some of the stressors I was dealing with, and going to my classes and looking at some research to try and figure out some solutions to help reduce some of these stressors and understand where they were coming from and how you actually deal with them. So, in doing so, I learned a lot about what causes stress in our lives, how it affects our bodies. I learned a lot about what people did to relieve some of that stress in their lives. I also learned about a lot of mental disorders, many that were associated with service and service members, such as post traumatic stress disorder, major depressive disorder, bipolar disorder, substance abuse. So I started learning about all of these aspects throughout my studies in school, getting my bachelor's in psychology and later going on to my master's in social work. So along the way, I also started to get into motorcycles. And one of the things I started to realize when I got into motorcycles was that it was a great stress reliever for me. And when I was on the motorcycle and riding and doing some of these adventures and going some of these places, a lot of the stress I was dealing with and things going on in my life just seemed that much better and really calmed me down on the bike. And I wasn't sure exactly what it was that was contributing to that, but I know that it really made a difference in my quality of life. And I wanted to learn more about it and how I could go about uh, understanding those aspects and applying them more to my daily life when I couldn't be on the motorcycle. And in doing so, I was hoping that I could take some of those experiences and what I learned and the knowledge that I was getting from these classes and research and apply it to some of the things some of the other friends of mine were dealing with, especially veterans and service members that were transitioning from the military, because I definitely saw many of the hardships and experienced some myself that they deal with getting out of the service and transitioning to civilian life. So, in doing so, I learned that one of the aspects that people do to cope with stress and that helps them deal with stress and anxiety and helps them deal with traumatic events in their life is, cognitive behavioral therapy, where basically you find ways of changing thought patterns and behaviors um, through different techniques, which basically give you coping mechanisms in order to change your thought patterns and the way that we actually behave, in certain situations. So one of the things I started to notice as I studied some of these cognitive behavioral therapy techniques was that if you can find ways to distract your mind and change your way of thinking, and you practice it more and more over time, it becomes less, it becomes easier for you to do so, and it actually reduces your anxiety symptoms and your stress by concentrating on other elements that take your mind off all these things that are causing you stress or causing you to think or fixate on things. So I noticed that one of the aspects that actually worked for me when I was feeling a lot of stress in my life was riding my motorcycle. But I was wondering what it was about that that actually worked for me. And when I did that and started to take into account some of the research that I had learned in my classes and the techniques I had learned in my classes in social work and psychology, I started to realize that one of the things that allowed me to really cope well on the motorcycle and deal with some of the stress I had going on in my life was on the motorcycle. I was doing so many different things and concentrating on the motorcycle itself and my balance points and shifting and what traffic was doing around me, that I wasn't thinking about anything else. I was just thinking about riding the motorcycle and not getting into an accident or not getting hit by someone. And that focus and that concentration actually relieved a lot of stress for me at the time because I wasn't thinking about anything else. I was just thinking about riding and the riding aspects of the motorcycle. So in doing so, I started to look into it more, and I started to ride more. And I started to notice that many of my friends were experiencing the same thing. They were starting to get motorcycle riding, and they found it very therapeutic for themselves. And they started integrating other things, such as going on adventures and trips on the motorcycle. And all of this was having a very positive impact on their lives and their quality of life, because when they were able to release some of the stress by riding their motorcycles and going on these adventures, it made life that much more easier for them. And the more that they did it, the more stress relieving it became for them, and the less symptoms they had from some of these disorders that they were dealing with, such as post traumatic stress disorder or anxiety symptoms, depressive symptoms. So it really worked for them. So I started to try and compile some of the things that they were doing, what was working for them, and practice some of it in my own life and share it with others. And I noticed it was having an impact on other people's lives the more that I shared it. So in comes Motorcycle Adventure Therapy and putting the website together and finding ways to share these experiences and why they work, from a research standpoint and from a, you know, different modalities that are practiced to reduce some of these symptoms that people are dealing with. And yeah, so that was basically how the therapy portion of the website came together. And I'm hoping that through sharing some of this knowledge and experiences of myself and others that have been dealing with stresses in their lives, that other people can reduce some of the stress in their lives. And whether it be going on adventures, that's a stress reliever for you, whether it be motorcycles, whether it be a combination of them, whatever it is that reduces the stress in your life, I want you to find a way to share that with other people so that they can use it as a tool to maybe find a stress reliever in their lives and improve their quality of life. So that's where the therapy portion of motorcycle adventure therapy came from. And hopefully it develops off of that and becomes a real tool for everyone to use along the way. This is Josh with Motorcycle Adventure Therapy saying, see you on the next adventure. And there's much more therapy segments to come. Like I said, this was just an introduction to give you an idea of where it came from and where we plan on taking it from this point. So the next segment, I'll probably do more of a focus segment on an aspect of therapeutic modalities to practice in your everyday life, whether it be for anger management, whether it be for substance abuse, whether it be for anxiety. I'm going to try and do segments to cover a little bit each one of those so that you might be able to apply that to your life. I know many of us, don't feel comfortable going to talk to people at times, or we don't want to go to doctors ourselves or therapists. So maybe those of you that might feel uncomfortable doing that will be able to take some knowledge from this, apply it to your lives, and not feel so stressed out about just going and talking to people about some of the stressors in your life you're dealing with. So that is the plan, and that's the hope for future segments. This is Josh from Motorcycle Adventure Therapy saying, see you on the next adventure.